when EOS implemented instant finality, it broke the ability for the IBC contracts to properly prove things happened on EOS because the consensus model changed. Therefore, the end result was tokens couldn't be bridged back off of EOS back to their native chains. You can go to them, but you can't proofless or whatever they call it, or trustless. Can't trustlessly prove it because the code doesn't support the new Antelope consensus. Now, for months, we've been trying to go back and forth on there are some paths to try to make it to where it can prove, but nobody particularly wants to do them, pay for them, whatever. So I've been working with Avril over at Alcor since he was front end mostly for all the IBC, and the two of us are the ones that are getting picked on about where are my tokens? Give me my tokens back. The decision was made a couple weeks ago to try to freeze at least the contracts on EOS so people can't continue to send in more tokens that can't be bridged, and then try to at least manually complete all the stuck ones, and then nobody will at least get their tokens stuck. You still can't bridge them, but at least you'll have them. That ring a bell because there was an MSIG a couple weeks ago for the WAX VPs related to that. I see a cast thumbs up, so I'll assume yes. So we already did the MSIG on WAX to change the permission so he can do whatever's needed. But the key was we had to update there are three contracts over on WAX, on EOS, that what we made the decision was at least to update them with a line of code on the contract to disable deposits, which then at least freezes things, and then we can fix what's stuck. So Avril worked on the code updates, and we proposed it, a couple days ago. And the EOS VPs reviewed it. We discussed it. And ultimately, within about 12 hours, made the decision and approvals to get it updated. So phase one has been completed. EOS no longer accepts the bridge tokens on the wrap lock contract. So now we can at least try to unstick the stuck tokens. And then we can figure out what all goes on with IBC. It's not killed, it's just disabled so it doesn't eat tokens trying to come back to WAX. You can still send them to EOS if you really want to. I wouldn't. Does that make sense? Any questions?
Yeah. No, makes sense. Do you have any update on the stance of the ENF for the IBC and the work that is needed to make it operational again? Did you ever talk about it again after it was shut down, or it couldn't work anymore?
Lots and lots of conversations with all the different chains about it. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure the detail of your question. Yeah, they are aware. They didn't intentionally turn it off. It's the nature of the beast once the consensus mechanism model changed. They are not completely abandoning it. The technology still works. I think it would work with spring chains easier and faster than it'll work with non-spring chains, leak chains. But I wouldn't be surprised if, eventually somebody doesn't. It's open source. It really just takes some code change and the protocol activation.
Okay.
Well, no, I'll be happy to have some technical conversations with you about it, but I tried to slide up in your DMs and give you all that information last time you said that. So, and it's not easy, or probably easy for you, but how about this? It's not super hard. There's already some work that's been done on it, I think, to update things to be able to handle whichever ways. But in my opinion, the biggest, I don't want to say deal breaker, but hurdle, technical hurdle on wax as well as Telos ultimately, which is the other major chain that's stuck, is that you need to activate this BLS protocol, not BSL, BLS. It's an encryption thing. But what that's going to do is that's going to require the entire network to shift everything over to V5. And both of the chains have expressed that, number one, there are technical limitations as to why they don't want to do it. And number two, the pros don't particularly outweigh the cons, that to fork out every non-V5 node is a pretty major effort if you're just trying to get IBC back going. Most chains tend to have their own IBCs with their own chains. You know, they've kind of evolved, at least Telos and Wax. They have their own stacks of bridges. So would they break all of that and have to go through all of the technical upgrades for going to V5 just to try to re-enable this Antelope IBC protocol? At least from what I've been relayed and understand, no, not immediately. Nick asked something, Colin. What did he ask?
So they don't see a good reason to put in the effort to make it work with non-Spring chains again. And there is no other Antelope chain which licensed Spring 5.0 from them.
I think it's not that they don't see a good reason. I think it's that no one wants to cough up the money for development that's needed. And also, this doesn't only affect Wax and Telos. This affects anyone that wants to deploy an Antelope sidechain and wants to use IBC, at least
Leap.
with Leap.
I do think that their support of Spring and maybe some work towards Spring is fine, but it's this cross bridging of tokens that has been the hang up. And even still, once the code gets built, these proof servers, when we talk about the code, there's a little bit on the contract side, but as I understand it, it's these proof servers that we run, and anybody else could, that generate these responses with the proofs. And that functionality is what really needs some heavy uplifting. And so far, nobody's really supported building things going backwards. Going forward, spring to spring, there's definitely interest in the architecture, and I think even maybe some initial work. But does that answer your question, Nick? Sorry.
Do you have the repos?
I believe yes. I'd have to dig them up, but I do believe there are some out there, and they probably need some context. But
With all the repos, perfect. Yeah, I'd love to have a look at them after the meeting.
Right. Happy to. IBC is it's always been one of my trigger subjects, but nobody wants to support it. At least, on the chains that have currently integrated to it. You've got EOS, you've got Wax, you've got Telos, and you've got UX. We'll just slide UX off to the side for a second. You then got EOS, which has activated and broken the integration to Telos and Wax. And both have these technical limitations of going to V5. Pros don't really outweigh the cons, regardless of even all the code work, which could cost God knows how much. If you're paying somebody to do it, somebody like yourself who just volunteers their time, by all means.
Okay, thank you very much for the summary here. Okay? I will take a chance and talk to Avril and ask him what the status is with the IBC and the unlocking of funds. Ever since the bridge stopped working, I saw that they upgraded the contract, but I didn't see any follow-up message on.
I can give you a general one. I mean, I can post one in there, but the first phase was to stop the EOS deposits, which happened 2 days ago, 3 days ago, whatever, a couple of days ago. Now he is working on compiling the final static list of what all needs to be fixed to be able to be proposed, executed, and manually completed. So it's going to take days. I don't know how long it's going to take it, but that's the current status as of a day or two ago. Does that answer it? I mean, you're more than welcome to reach out to Apple. I talk to them all the time.
I don't. So
good guy. At least what I know.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I'm going to slide into his DMs, and maybe we can pick up the topic again soon and see what we can do from where we are here. On another note,
probably be online in about 12 hours or so. His schedule's almost opposite of mine, I found. So just as that.
All right. On another note, asking primarily the VPs and the very tech-savvy people in this call. I want to ask what the qualitative and quantitative parameters are to identify if someone is a good validator. Only speaking about the ability to sign blocks and nothing else, not even the tech ops criteria that we have, the APIs, atomic acids, Delphi Oracle and stuff like that. Just the quality and just the qualitative and quantitative factors that help us determine if someone is a good validator. Where do we start this? Can we come up with a list of objectives?
Where I start with is, are you Swedish? If so.
Agreed.
Agreed. You live on a farm?
Minus 10 points. So you have no difficult questions today? Just like basic questions? I'm just joking.
You mean me?
Yeah. This question is rather complex.
Correct.
It is, but I want what I expect as a result is a list of those criteria, and without a huge weight on them. Like, let's say you want a validator to be reliable, so you're looking at missed rounds, missed blocks. Okay, so that's one of the criteria we're looking at. The other one is how much are you overbilling? Okay, that means that determines somehow the quality of your validator or the hardware you're putting into it. Like a list like this is what I expect to get with asking that question. So what else do we have there? Quantitative and qualitative criteria as objective as possible to determine who's a good validator and who's not that good.
Some of your quality traits of your good validators might not be objectively measured. It's easy to run a node when it breaks, it's the problem. Or when it changes, or when, you know?
Yeah.
It's 8 hours a month until it's not.
No one? I was looking for more here.
I'll toss a couple chips in. All right, so I think you can look at this even from like a further back point of view of just saying, well, because like a validator, you could look at it as just being like, okay, who's running the best, like almost like API here, right? Who's running the best little piece of technology? I know it's not an API. I know it's not, but it's also like, well, you got some requirements that need to be met as far as like the infra goes, and yeah, like you could measure in terms of like, well, how often are they dropping blocks? What's the SLR on it? How many transactions are they consistently processing? But it's like in the end, like they're all kind of non sequiturs for the most part. I don't think let's say we have this data. Let's assume we were able to come up with the metrics for this, and we were able to assess everyone, and we have this new hierarchy now. What can be done with this? What's the next step with this information? I think the conclusions that we would draw from this information would not be very telling of the capabilities of the guilds.
I mean, I agree. It's tough to measure the entire supermarket on the same scale, right? I mean, it always is. I will say, maybe just in the discussion and brainstorming on it, in my opinion, I think it is important to maybe start breaking them down into roles. I know you've tried to kind of isolate it, but there's block proposers / validators. That's the blocks, that's the peering, that's the response time. That's, there's a lot related to the specifics of block production and even the nuances and mechanics of it. There's then the whole additional piece, at least there are lags, of infrastructure. And you mentioned API. I mean, even you talk about overbuilding. If my API is a potato and my block producer is a Ferrari, that in itself actually inadvertently creates an interesting problem. I'm overbuilding, but my BP isn't. So there's kind of this, and understanding why is that even possible? What happens with that? Why do I not get transactions? Why is my API not working right? I mean, there's this whole other layer of understanding versus block producing and understanding, and it does mostly just work. And when it doesn't work, you respond and you get it working again. Versus the whole concept of infrastructure and the knowledge of how it all works and what all the extra pieces are. And then the whole value add side of it, which I'm just going to kind of slide off because you seemingly focused more on the technical infrastructure. But there's the block production, there's the billing, there's the Ferrari. That's one server out of 54 in this rack, Yeah.
Because an assumption based on uptime and no, not even uptime, but we never considered like how an BP, how a validator performs in the past, right? That's the only objective criteria we have there to assess if someone has a good validator has been missed rounds in the past.
CPU time
this is fairly
also.
easy then. CPU time also, yeah.
Made it a little better.
It hasn't failed for a very long time now, the CPU time. We see it on testnet failing occasionally, but on mainnet it has been good.
Failing.
During the past
not
months.
Getting below the 3.5 or 0.35 milliseconds.
0.3, yeah, but if I recall correctly, also from previous talks, that metric can be gamed, right? Because you can configure how many transactions you want to put into a block or not.
If you want to measure more advanced numbers, you can as well. You can start to look at the average and median and max min total CPU time per block, and start to look at how their blocks actually look, if they often have empty blocks or low transactional blocks. It's not as simple as that. Can't look at one block, can't look at one round. As all this data, it can be of different reasons. But by looking at that, you can start to see patterns and We have been doing that and poking teams when they have had issues. Usually it's because of peering or notice acting up and they just need to restart it or kick it. Michael probably throws a beer at it and then it's all good. I don't know.
That's right. No.
Probably.
You gotta love on pet them.
You probably
Nick-
would. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think you would probably need to log all the P2P traffic to see what's actually going around versus what is done to look at those block shenanigans, don't you think?
Oh, good luck with that. I have a wall of nodes dedicated to squashing all of that out just so you can produce blocks and them not be empty. So, yeah, I wouldn't even bother with. I can guarantee you a lot of stuff gets thrown out of that peer-to-peer mesh just because it has to. But I will say in that discussion, you mentioned your, rating scale or judging criteria. Is missed blocks or the CPU mechanic script, which is good.
It's both.
Layer
It's
one.
both.
Well, we'll say it's layer one, but those are at the most basic level. Obviously.
Yeah.
But what's important about the mechanic script and that 0.35 milliseconds was set 4 years ago because it was an average of what people could get down to and what you didn't need to be up in. So in theory, that number should actually be curving down because that's great. You're making 0.35 milliseconds. I'm making 0.11. So even at 0.3, you're triple billing in theory for that same prime metric number calculation versus what newer hardware is coming out. So be careful using that 0.35 indefinitely. And then going to, we'll call it layer 2, and love that Swedish guy over there for building the tool that doesn't just look at the CPU metrics, it really looks at what's going on the chain and then just compares it to everything else out there and gives you a bearing on every 6 months faster hardware comes online. It's going to constantly want to tilt like this. So be careful using 0.35. Yeah, definitely don't be above it. But even 0.35 was established when the lowest we could really get with an i9 was 0.22. We can get 0.11 now.
I get that point.
I would also add response time to problems.
Right.
What do you mean by response time?
Well, I put that in missed blocks.
If you have a problem, how long does it take for that team to react and resolve that problem? At least
okay,
react
so
and
mean,
respond to it.
You mean sysadmin response time? Yeah, okay. Got it.
May that be a down producer, may that be a down API, doesn't really matter. May it be an issue of something. Issues can happen, so it's not about just fix the time until the issue reported, the issue fixed. It's the response time when you start to work on it, I guess. There shouldn't be any issues, but issues will occur.
Isn't it the case that most of the VPs run automated failovers? So how would you tell if someone responded in person and if he responded fast or fast
Doesn't
enough?
have to be in person.
That's response enough that it doesn't harm the chain. That's
A good team should, if you have good teams operating the chain, you should never notice the problem.
Yeah, okay. I'm totally there. But isn't that completely reflected in assessing the missed rounds during the past 2 weeks?
I do tend to
Not completely.
generalize them together. I know Anders would probably split them, but
There are more aspects to it, but yes, you see it in that. Depends on how much you want to dig into it.
Sometimes it's an easy fix. Sometimes it's an absolute nightmare to fix. You never really know. It always happens when you're on vacation. The point is to be able to make sure the chain isn't detrimented as much as you can, or little as it could be, whatever. Kiefer, get your hand, man.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, we have been reducing the CPU time actually a couple of times. It's 0.3 right now. And when we started, it was 2. First iteration of the guidelines, when I entered the office, the cap was at 2 milliseconds.
That much is just because those original teams were running potatoes.
So the reason we did not go lower than 0.3 right now is that we wanted it to be able to run on server hardware and not just i9s, because we have to juggle the requirements of RAM, because we were accounting for the RAM inflation, and when we potentially hit a point where we could have to have more than 196 gigabytes of RAM, that's currently not supported by i9s. And
Right.
that's the core reason why we did not lower the requirements.
And a lot of Xeon W's or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Anders knows because he runs real servers. But
Yeah.
point, and I also say this as somebody who runs Lamborghinis, it's not always pushing the line down. You might think about pulling the floor up.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
you encourage people to do 200 miles an hour,
we don't want to
then-
race to the bottom, and that was the whole point. We want the whole thing to be more average, and we also discussed at some point to essentially have a minimum, so that you shouldn't go below. So you shouldn't be too fast.
Right.
We should have like a band where you should stay in. We're considering to just define a band and then say if you go out of this band or if you go above of that band, you lose some points. Not as minimum requirements, just as a rough metric.
I'll also say this, and Anders' numbers have been great at detailing it, is what shows up good on the prime meridian calculation,
Exactly.
like an i9 with a fast thread, doesn't, my i9 10th gen will do very well on that, but it doesn't have the latest chipset, RAM, DDR, all DDR5, stuff like that. And it's noticeable that a new Intel Xeon with DDR5 and the new speed will actually be a better validator, because overall, whatever all the different variations of transactions are,
Then we have
RAM
the
heavy,
curveball.
CPU heavy.
The curveball is it a better because it's faster, or is it better to be average?
Right.
Yeah, but also it's just, are you average on just the mechanic score, or are you average on real world transactions? And where we want to get to in the next coming months is to actually factor in real world transactions and real world performance, and not just the CPU metrics.
I want to note that before we derail into two separate conversations, the one is what makes a good validator node, right? And how do we assess it? And the other one is the API side of it, being overbuilt on the API.
Well, infrastructure, all of it.
Yeah, having, okay.
In my
So-
opinion, I think you should focus, yes, if you want to talk about the validation.
Yeah, so let's draw a line between them. The one is the criteria for determining a good node validator. The other one is also, which we discussed last week. We are planning to have a test case where we test the APIs for overbilling frequently to determine if an API is of good quality or not, which in my opinion is also a qualitative factor of being a BP on Wax. You provide the RPCs, the wallet nodes. They should be of good quality because that's where the user interacts with the chain, right? It's very important that we have good APIs.
Yes, but like I say, that can be different than your validators. Going down that, when you ask about what do you need to be a good validator, right? You need good hardware, or at least understanding of it, right? So we talked about that. In my opinion, I do think it's important to have a general understanding of the way Antelope Leap works in relation to the configs, in relation to, at least at the core level, peer-to-peer meshing, because it doesn't make any sense. You would think everybody in the list and it'll work, and it doesn't really work that way. But not only do you need to understand who you're peered with, and of course, as BPs tend to do private peering because we need to make sure whatever. But even as we talked about, is this peer-to-peer layer. Like I say, I've got a wall of servers that is basically dedicated to these antelope settings, which as a validator, I have to make sure I keep out the trash and accept all of the real transactions and try not to get it wrong. And that doesn't work natively. So, and it definitely when you start running APIs and all sorts of other stuff too. So in my opinion, that's why we tend to, you need to be, number one, kind of a Linux sysadmin. It doesn't run on Windows very well. You got to put it in performance mode. You kind of got to understand, a little bit about the machine, exposing ports, whatever. And then secondly, you really got to understand and build your infrastructure properly to be able to join the network and not be susceptible to empty blocks. That's typically what happens. Your peering breaks down or your nodes just get overloaded to where you're the peering problem. But most people don't even realize that because it just works until it doesn't. They complain, we tell them to add some peers, and magically it starts working again.
Okay, so Anders is, I understand, Michael. Anders is commenting that block latency between scheduled neighbors. 1, 2, good transaction peering. And 3, good block peering. Okay, for that I think I need
1
to
and
pull up
3
the
is a little bit
graphic.
of the same thing. It doesn't have to be, but it's a little bit. Latency between neighbors is basically the latency between all the producers. But neighbors are the most important. You need to have good latency to the people in front of you and after you in the schedule to optimize how you produce blocks. And that is pretty rough, especially if you are like Michael and Ross. It's very, very difficult, but that means that they have to actually work on stuff like that. It's not about having the best, like they actively need to optimize things to reduce this latency.
I think you need to at least give me some context around that. Why is it me and Ross?
No, because you're on different side of the world.
Right. And we're alphabetically always side by side. It actually, Hong Kong, USA, Australia, and Rio always tend to bunch up alphabetically. Interestingly, here on Wax, we changed that so you can order yourself and you need to understand, well, why do I even pick a number, right? You kind of got to have a core understanding of running a node and what it's doing. To be able to make sure that last block isn't late, because in Leap, it will fork and cause these mini forks if there's too much of a delay between the two different BPs. And you do see that on other chains that don't have the technical prowess paying attention. I will also say this interesting thing I learned. Spring changed the way that worked backwards. It's not the last BP that wins anymore. It literally will start causing micro forks between the two BPs and argue and try to figure out which one's the valid block. So in 3 years, if y'all do decide to go spring or whatever, that BP peering is going to regress back to, it is much more delicate and much more important to understand what the hell's going on and coordinate it. Otherwise, it gets bad very quick. Fun fact of the day.
That little detail, the latency with the neighbors, it is only visible to me as a BP, right? It can't be seen, the latency can't be measured from the outside.
It's hard. It's actually the other way around. it's hard to see it from your own nodes. You look like you did what you were supposed to do for the most part. The problem is between you doing your job on your node and the next BP in line, we'll say he's over in Australia. If it takes too long for the block to get there, Ross assumes I didn't do it and signs the block anyway. And then you create these two versions called a micro fork. And Ross always wins if he's the latter one in the chain. That's the way they've changed the mechanics to work, to say, if you're late, you lose no matter what. So that's why we always send our last block late, or you'll see these short blocks at the end, because we only have half a second to get around the world. Do you know what kind of ping latency I have to Australia? About 500 milliseconds, best case. So you cut it short and send it early, and make sure you're paired with them to make sure, Ross, here's my block, have the best chances possible to get to your BP before you assume that it didn't get done. Sign the block anyway, and then cause a micro fork that rolls back Hyperions, atomics, anything that's indexing the chain, it triggers a fork. Make sense?
Yep. How can we formulate an objective criteria out of it? Seems impossible to me.
In my opinion, right now, if you see them missing a block regularly, not a round, which triggers alerts. If you go to the Aloha graph, there's two statistics: how many blocks were missed and how many rounds were missed. You will see them showing up as random blocks that didn't get signed, but it wasn't all 12, therefore it didn't trigger a missed round. See, that's the difference
See
between
here
those two.
for Sweden, for example, 12 months. So this is a year, right?
Yeah.
Didn't
I mean,
miss
it
a
happens.
round in a year, but missed 14 blocks.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Because our
it's
failover
hard.
activates in the missing block span.
There you go.
Do you feel ashamed now, Anders?
Yeah, very. More than one block per month.
Yeah.
A lot of those numbers are actually very good that I see in that list.
And in all fairness,
Um,
I can
yeah.
I can make this number very good by just cutting out my blocks too early or whatever. You know, I can make sure that I get the blocks out, but I'm shortchanging the network because I'm not going to spend my time processing transactions because I got to get it out so fast. I got to cheat. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you can fix those, but it's kind of this balance that you play with. How long can I spend doing transactions before I have to draw a line in the sand and say, all right, send it down the line? Because if you don't, it's gonna get forked out. And I mean, sometimes it's out of your control. You do understand cosmic rays hit the internet, right? I mean, especially those of us on the East Coast that border to the Europe nodes. I got to throw it across that pond every single time in a half a second. I don't even know where I'm at on that list. I probably got a good 480. Not too bad out of 2.7 million blocks signed.
In a year, yeah.
Not
just,
even
spent-
99.99.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I'm US USA.
that's a bit different. Top signing guild during the past 12 months for blocks scheduled, if I see correctly, was 3DK.
Oh, you mean how many blocks was scheduled?
Oh no, it was, my mistake. Alcor. Alcor signed the most blocks.
Right. I mean, if you don't unreg, you would get assigned more blocks. And assuming you sign, blocks scheduled. They didn't sign 2 rounds, so I don't know. Or they missed 51 blocks. So 3 million minus 51. Anyway, it's hard, man. I mean, look, we even poor Wombat, right? I mean, they had a hell of a time not too long ago. But I mean, look at their stats. I mean, it's not bad. But I mean, with shit breaks.
I can't recall Taco losing so many rounds during the past year.
There was an issue with their nodes at some point.
And a round is 2 minutes. So I mean, multiply that times 2, and that's how many minutes. And again, it takes almost 3 minutes to figure out that your shit's broke. Unless you're Sweden.
Back to the original question about the quality of a node or a node operator or whatever you should call it. It's you have a lot of subjectivity there. You need to see how they react, what happens. Everything can't really be measured on just pulling data.
Right.
Yeah.
Being in discussions, what happens when there's problems? Do they notice things, fixing bugs, response to questions when there are, knowing how the core system works? All these small little tweaks that you need to do to make everything operate properly.
Yeah.
All of those play part in it, in my opinion.
It surely does, but we never applied such a subjective criteria in the past. Like,
I know.
yeah,
I've been asking for it from the start. I don't think more objectivity is always the way. I think it should be both.
Honestly, I second that view. But the starting point for me is always objective criteria. Because if someone doesn't lose a round in a year, I don't see why I should read a single message from him on Telegram.
Yeah, but the problem with subjectivity is how much is good.
Yeah. And bias,
No.
risk of bias.
Yeah, that's a big problem. So we might tend to agree that a block producer is doing generally a good job, but there will be always edge cases on what happened today or last incident or whatever, that without having objective metrics, I mean, it's a kind of worms.
In another case, we do apply some subjectivity every there and then. For example, if a Hyperion SLR drops below 95%, but that guild has told us that the maintenance is going on in a public group, right? And they
but that's not exactly subjectivity, because we announced that if you are doing maintenance, we will take this into account. I do agree that it's somehow subjective, but it's a known rule, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to keep technical evaluation as objective as possible, in contrast to the evaluation of the products and ecosystem contributions, because this is highly subjective. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
It's tough, man. I don't envy you.
Whatever we do, we will do it wrong somehow.
Sure.
So that's the very basics of the job. And there always will the system will always be game. There always will be edge cases and flaws, and it doesn't matter whatever we do. There's always a way to game it. Always.
Well, I mean, game. I hear you. If money's at stake, you should expect people to try. You know, gaming, in my opinion, more means, malice or being towards that.
Maybe it's not the right word, but you got the idea.
I get it. And I mean, I myself had to have that epiphany. Does that make sense? I mean, it's not gaming. It's just, if your paycheck depends on it, you're going to try as hard as you can, right? So,
Yeah.
I
That's
do
okay.
say, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, finish your thoughts. All right.
No, I was getting back to you can fake metrics to get by, but in my opinion, if that's the level of understanding you have, that's good enough. That's the prowess, So
if you actually manage to game some metrics, you deserve the points because you understand how to do it.
if
Right?
you tell me that you're gaming those CPU mechanics, that you're literally going in there and posting your own, and I'm like, you got that. That's all I need. You understand it enough, man.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. But and it's like, it's not the end of the world if it can be gamed, right? It depends on the severity of it, right? If it's outright exploitive,
If it's a competition, it's gonna be gamed. Isn't that kind of the definition?
yeah, and sometimes it's just like EV positive to pick up some strategies,
Oh, I'm
having an edge, whatever edge that you can have. And it's like I don't think you'll ever be able to create like a perfect guideline that like can be etched into stone, and you'll never have to worry about doing a revision on it ever again, and it'll be fully autonomous. I don't think that's even possible, and I don't think you guys should be hard on yourself for not doing everything perfectly and not because like this, the role isn't possible to do perfectly.
I don't know if any of us lose sleep at night thinking we didn't try hard enough. We do lose money at night sometimes.
Yeah, looking at the grooves in the ceiling of the drywall,
Hey, go back to that list where I was on top. I like that one.
Which
I
one?
think it was inline
This one?
actions. Actually, it was an interesting. I don't know which one you were bouncing around and clicking, but there was one where Wax USA was at the top, but it showed we did like 390 some odd inline transactions, like 200 more than everybody else.
Yeah, this one
Yeah.
here.
See, I mean,
Yeah, that one is it's a little bit hard data number to actually look at. It's mostly for BPs, not really to measure things.
Anders,
Yeah.
my
how
number's
hard
bigger. Shut up.
how hard is it to make a monthly summary out of for that one, like a snapshot that calculates the past 2 weeks, for example?
It's just more data, but it's not difficult. What's the benefit of having
Yeah,
2 weeks?
a bigger data set. Is that what you're looking for?
No, that's what we're using as a time frame for the tech reviews. And if I would be able to see if a guild has been overbilling during the past 2 weeks compared to the other guilds, that would be a qualitative criteria for me to assess how well a BP is validating.
I'll say, as somebody who was playing with these, and I went from a 10th gen to a 14th gen, it was interesting. And I don't remember, I think Anders even changed the range of it, because there's a balance between, you need a larger data set to be able to get a good window on you even having the chance to sign your versions of those actions. But when you have such a wide range, any changes that you make to it, it takes a long time for them to fully flesh out. You know what I mean?
Yep. And also, like, everything goes more towards median the longer it is.
Right.
But it can happen. I mean, it's not that much work to get more larger time frame. I'm not sure how the data will play out.
Yeah, well, it will be much larger data set, but the average on the CPU billing should show, I think, yeah, it would show if a BP is performing well or not. Yeah, if a validator is performing well or not. Compared to
The
others,
bigger
I mean,
data set you get, the less visibility you're going to have into that. I mean, in my opinion, because it's the anomalies that are as much of a problem. You know what I mean?
no.
If you're looking for spikes on a graph, the more data you put into there, the more flattened that graph gets. So you lose the ability, unless it's egregious, to spot them. You need enough of a data set for it to be a good average, but not too much of a data set to lose. When you have 1 out of 100 overbuild, that stands out more than 1 out of 1,000. Does that make sense?
I think I can follow that argument.
In my opinion, it's easy. He can roll it all together, but we played with that. I think originally it was like 3 days, and then I think he maybe made it a week, or it was a week and made it 3 days. I don't remember what the hell he did.
Yeah,
Maybe
we
he just built it and
played
we had
around
to
with a
wait
lot of
3 days.
different numbers.
But it was interesting as somebody who was even trying to troubleshoot, right? I mean, that's the whole point, kind of. It's not a list of shame. It's more, oh, I had no clue. Huh. Well, what if I do this? Does that change it? Well, if you got to wait 2 weeks, man, it's hard as hell. You know? But in my opinion, the last week of transactions being billed on their BP that would be what you should look at. I mean, if you want to go back 2 weeks, you could, but I probably only would do that unless there is a reason to know what was last week. Was it different? Did they fail over to a BP and now they're back? You know, I mean, main thing is looking at somebody being like, hey, you may be signing blocks and you may be doing prime numbers good, but you're not doing inline actions. Possibly not because of your BP not being fast enough, possibly because your peering is bad. It could have something completely irrelevant to the actual performance. But the net result is you don't get any inline actions because you never get them. Make sense? Just as a example. Anybody else have some opinions? Or tools? No? You got some kind of a tool that, oh yeah, I built this a year ago. Check this out.
I bet he started building the tool that you just mentioned. But I also saw that he started building a tool to test the APIs, like build a transaction and send it to different APIs and see what the billing looks like.
Oh, yes. Which is a whole separate ball of wax.
We will probably revisit that topic that we just had. Thank you very much for all the input and feedback for that. Not sure if we see any actionables there now, but I'm curious to learn what makes a good validator and how we can incentivize further being a good validator on Wax. So,
Well,
not sure
a
if
good
we need to
validator
take action now.
relative. I will say this: be careful using good validator.
Yeah, a productive validator.
Successful. You may have good people.
Successful.
Some of us are just really good at breaking shit. But
Yeah. We have
tried.
testnet for that.
Oh no, you tested live.
Okay, as I just mentioned, the testnet, there are 2 other topics I would like to ask you, or I would like to introduce and followed up by a question. We currently have in the guidelines a testnet. So how do we assess if someone has a good infra setup we look at testnet, we look at the Hyperion on testnet. There are no points for atomic assets on testnet, for example. But I do still feel like testnet is the place to build and the place to test, right? That's what we have it for. Do we need to make any adjustment to the guidelines?
One for the Wax Team guidelines.
What do you mean?
To test things on testnet, you would love to have the cloud wallet, you know,
Oh, huh.
to work properly.
I asked about that last year. And
I remember that it was going to be. I lost that when multi-chains and everything. I don't know what happened. I don't think that ever happened.
You're right. I can't speak.
Because it sounded
for
like it
the
was
Wax Team
right
as well.
around the corner about a year ago, and unless I missed something, that hasn't happened yet.
Oh no, you didn't miss anything. I think it was supposed to come somewhere this year. It didn't, as we
Q1, I
clearly see
think.
today.
Or maybe Q2.
Yeah,
Q4, Q5.
we have a representative of the Wax Team here. He wrote soon TM, so that probably means 2025. Unsatisfied.
Quarters from now, days from now, years from now.
I think that question is directed at Include Null.
No, I don't think he can answer that.
I don't think so too, but you just made a new point on the agenda for the call with the Wax Team. So I'm going to ask that and report the answer back on the governance channel.
Hey, on that call, isn't it probably, this made me think, because that was last year. Here's our 2025 roadmap. Here's what we're planning on working on and rolling out. Have they rolled one of those out yet? That's where I think I remember seeing it.
Sorry, I couldn't follow that. What was with the roadmap? What did you just say?
2025 roadmap. Last year they pushed the 2024 roadmap. Have they pushed the 2025 roadmap? What do they plan on it? What's on it? When you're on your call with the Wax Team, that's what I was suggesting.
Yeah, let's pull up that roadmap and see what
Is it out?
else we can find in there. Yeah, there was a Medium post at the beginning of the year, right? So
For 2024, correct. That's what I said.
yeah.
So I'm not more critiquing if it was done or not. I'm more mean the 2025.
Can we get a new
version.
one?
Yeah.
Can we get an update on that one and a new one?
Right.
Okay, that's good. Hit me with more things that you want to know, and
Is
I will
it
make
possible
sure.
to, when you talk to them next time, to get a request or suggestion that we get like every 4 or 8 weeks we get a update on what they're doing? Doesn't have to be super detailed. Just hey,
wait,
these
I'm-
are the things we're working on.
Yeah, let me take some notes.
That would be, because that's what everyone has been asking for the last few meetings. We want to know more what's happening, and doesn't have to be all the details. Hey, this is exactly what we're doing, but we just want to know what that they're doing something and how it's going. And if they're not doing something, we would want to know that as well.
All right. So one by one, hit me with the questions one by one. Exactly.
Can we get frequent updates every 4, 8, 12 weeks? 12 I think is too far. I think it should be more frequent.
Every 8 weeks, let's say 8. Okay.
I think the first question was a 2025 roadmap.
Yeah.
And then that those updates were related to whatever the.
Yeah, let me add that at the beginning. Then this comes from the BPs. Can we get a 2025 roadmap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the updates I'm talking about is more like just bullet points, maybe some explanation of what it is, maybe a link to Git commits if they are doing something like that. something where you can track progress, or hey, we're working on a big marketing approach, or we're working on releasing a new product, and it's, I don't know, doesn't have to be all the details. So I don't know. We also want to know that they are alive.
Yeah, wonderful. I will also bundle that with I'm taking notes in parallel request to Lucas to join first roundtable in January for a talk about WAX 2025. Okay, is that what we want? That's what we want, right? Then also noted, can we get a 2025 roadmap for WAX? What from the 2024 roadmap still progressing or has been cancelled?
Yeah, just an update on it.
Yeah. And then Anders also, can we get frequent updates every 8 weeks on current progress? I like that.
Yeah, or more frequent, but yeah, 8 weeks, 4 weeks.
8 weeks is good, right?
I guess they have something like that internally. They can just take out the key aspects and share it with the community.
Yeah.
I'll add one more thing to that list. Can we have an actual, like, because this, I feel like this goes outside the purview of what the OIG should be responsible for doing. Can we have an actual delegated representative that is actually representing the WAX team's interests in here in these meetings every Tuesday? Because every Wednesday, Brian is there representing the interests of the EOS Network Foundation, and I don't see why WAX doesn't feel the need to represent their interests here, you know?
Ooh.
I added that as, can we have an actual delegated representative on WAX on the roundtables?
Because then after every meeting on Wednesdays, they summarize it, they take the transcript and they summarize, they make it into an entire article that people can read, they can digest the information. I've seen the things, like the topics that I've talked about, be mentioned here, you know, and the same the topics that everyone else talks about. And it's very refreshing to see, like, there is considerable amount of effort that goes into this. And I really don't think this should be delegated to you guys as the OIG. I don't think this is your guys' responsibility at all. Like, I don't think this is your guys' shortcoming.
Yeah, thank you a lot. For once, we are not responsible for something.
Yeah, I think you've already done tremendous work, Raikkonen, in establishing these meetings with as like a roundtable, and I think they got to meet you halfway.
I have some opinions on that. I'll let anybody else speak, I guess, before.
So what I can promise you is we are going to have at least another 104 roundtables until my term ends in January 2026. So
I would say this in regards to, there's a slight difference between the functional structure of the ENF and EOS and all of that. There are a lot more people on that team. There's a lot more funding that has been allocated to make sure there are people that are dedicated and developers that are available, and it is scoped. It's open, but it's very scoped, you know, I mean, and whatever. These conversations on Tuesday, while I love them sometimes, I would hate to see Lucas or Craig get drug in here when we're haggling about different things that may or may not be the best use of their very limited. There's not a lot of people or a lot of time. So I love it. I would love Lucas and Craig to show up here. It'd be cool. I think they get some benefit out of it. It's just, that's apples and oranges. The ENF has that structure.
Fully agree. But I think it would be a nice addition to our roundtables to have some official WAX representative with us every 8 weeks. I really like that idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what I say. And you definitely can. I just.
Yeah,
Well, I would love-
that was a pre-election comment also by Ross. He said he hasn't talked to someone from the Wax team for a year now. And definitely need to change that.
It's funny. I mean, I've said the same thing and dealt with it. We have communications with them. You know, we all, whether you have it already or you ask for it, you can have communications. It's just that there's not much to talk about. That makes sense. It kind of gets lost in the, you know, we feel disconnected from the VPs, from the Wax team. I absolutely know. I got him on speed dial. I slide up in his DMs. I got Slacks. I got whatever. I mean, shit at the fan. I get it, right? But it's not so much about the channels. It's literally just about, what are you working on? What's the next cool thing? I can keep a secret. What do you need my help with? What can I possibly help out with? You know what I mean? That's always, and I get it. Hard, small team.
Yeah, it's also about the inspiration that comes from talking to each other, right? You often hear the pain points and what inspires someone based on that.
While you may or may not agree with what the ENF or the EO side is doing, they definitely feed that information out there, you know, or even like Proton or Telos, you know, I mean, in their respects, that there's at least some communication. Here's what we're working on.
I would say all other chains have that. The Antelope chains. FIO has everything up in a public dashboard and everything as well.
FIO, man, they're some levels up here and some versions down here. But yeah.
Wait, do we actually want someone from the Wax team to join our roundtables, or do we want them to organize their own 8 weeks?
We want information, I think. At least from my side, we just want updates. We want to know what's happening. We would like to see that they are working on things. We see sometimes that something happens. Would be nice to get some structure on that.
What are you working on? What could I maybe build that could use that, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a dev shop, but if you know something's coming and you could ramp up and get prepared for it, I just feel like a lot of us kind of learn via Twitter posts.
Yeah, or Twitter Spaces or whatever. Yeah, and I get what you mean. That's probably the only touching point with the Wax team, other than Discord. I think they're pretty active on Discord, but I'm not so active on Discord myself, so I can judge the activity over there. But anyways, I opened the list. What else do we put into that list? Any other questions for the Wax team you want us to forward to them?
Wind Moon?
Yeah. So, no one?
Nothing. I can give you all sorts of stuff. Any plans on for-profit funding for projects?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's okay. I know the answer.
I don't think we'll have to solve all the problems in the universe in this one meeting. I think that's a great start though, that list. One step at a time, man. If we are done on this topic, I would like to bring up another topic about the guild evaluations and on the infra side. I believe that there are, let me bring it up real quick. I believe that there are 2 points being given to every guild that shouldn't be. I think it kind of goes against what the even evaluations say that should be doing. So maybe I'm misunderstanding it. Would like a little bit of correction on this. So one of them is the price oracle, and the other one is the chain API. So if you do not provide either one of those, you will be docked points. If the SLR drops below 95%, you are docked points. But if you provide it, then you are given a point. And because it's like a bare minimum requirement of being a guild, well, it's kind of like just giving 2 free points to every guild.
You
What are
need
some thoughts on
to
that?
pay attention to the guidelines there. The guidelines for the chain for the price oracle is you have to provide the price oracle for 3 price pairs, I think. You have to correct me. I have to look at the actual guidelines for the exact number, but you have to provide for a certain set of price points. I think it's the most important part is WaxP USD to not get penalized. But you only get points if you provide more than that. And the idea with that was that we planned to add more price pairs that can optionally be provided, and you have to provide all optional price pairs to get the bonus points. And that's currently, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the Delphi Oracle, you only have to provide WaxP USD to not be penalized, as you can see from the guidelines, but you have to provide 5 or 6 price pairs, I think it was 6, to get the full points.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you have to provide them with a reasonable uptime. So it happens that the script crashes at times, and you don't push prices to the chain, which has no direct negative impact if you're the only guild on the price oracle, but still.
Has it been updated? I don't think, Kafer, you hadn't pushed the update to where you can feed it when you're unragged, right?
Yes, correct. But you can provide it on testnet. So we always expect guilds to be ragged on testnet and mainnet. So you have to push the prices also on testnet.
Well, so yes, the part of the point on that is the way the system works is it only accepts feeds from BPs, right? And it's only X amount of BPs. But when you unrag, say you have an issue, and like I said, my server, smoke coming out of the back, whatever, I unrag and say, look, I got to go call the fire department. I literally, my oracles are trying to feed, but the contract asserts because I'm not a registered BP. And therefore, you've got this time frame of ticking is you know that your uptime on the Delphi Oracle is going down, but it's ultimately because you're not regged as a BP actively because you're troubleshooting the validation node. So, and Kafer had mentioned updating it to better handle and use the OIG contract.
Also currently the limit that it can only receive updates from up to 30 guilds.
Is it 30? I didn't remember whether that got uncapped. But.
And the 30 is based on votings and votes. And that's also a problem because many of our standbys don't have enough votes to be in the top 30 because we have all these legacy guilds in there that don't even run producers anymore. So, yeah.
Give them to me. I'll sign the MTIG to just reassign them to me. That's cool.
Yeah.
So do we keep it? So let's go through them one at a time. So just for the price oracle, do we keep it as is? Should there be movement to making it so that the expectation is now set to you providing all of these 5 or 6 price pairs, or else it would be dark points? It seems like a very low-hanging fruit that everyone's able to do.
It definitely is a low-hanging fruit, but
and it's just not able to discern people, and that's
not everything,
what the whole evaluations are for discerning.
Not everything needs to be hard. So
I agree.
If we were to take the points away, we would at the same time lower the minimum score requirements. So it doesn't really matter. And then again, right now at least, the only important price pair is WaxP USD. So, and that one is crucial. It's not just important, it's crucial because the whole pay calculations and everything rely on it. We have other smart contracts that rely on it. So that one is crucial. Everything else is sort of optional. So that's why I stand by leaving that as is. Aside of probably into adding more pairs. So we're discussing adding WaxP to Sol or Sol USD or even both there.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'll add, as somebody I'm a big fan of feeding all of the pairs and do Delphi Oracle on all the chains. I can tell you there is somewhat of an inherent, I don't know, cost, if you want to call it. The more pairs you provide, the more polls to these APIs, and eventually those free ones cut you off rate limit, to have problems update, and to be able, like when we were feeding mainnet wax and testnet wax, I had to rewrite my scripts because when you run them both at the same time from the same data center, I would hit rate limits and have to pay like, I don't know, $800 a month or something for a price feed Oracle. So I will say now, like on EOS, where it costs for every CPU transaction, those are heavy CPU transactions.
Yeah, that too.
Big data. It's not as much here. And of course, I mean, a pebble in a pond, probably for most BPs. We get paid in wax. We probably have enough that we can fund this CPU for 20 more hours. But like on EOS, I mean, I spend, I don't know, 20, 30 EOS a month or something. Maybe not that much. But, and it's all related to the chunk of data because it's a big, it updates a bunch of table records and rebalances the average or whatever, right? I mean, there's just, it's some heavy that goes along with it. So it seems like it's just whatever. But when that rate limit changes or your script goes nuts and fires twice in the same minute, and all of a sudden it causes a snowball effect of rate limit in hell. If you just want to have the core and then have the extra icing, I would love to feed Sol. I would love to feed whatever else you want. I don't believe like everybody needs to do that. You just need enough people to do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we wanted to keep that one optional. I think the only thing that it's mandatory is WaxP USD and should remain that way. And then we wanted to add more price pairs, but do not have everybody to push everything. So if we add more price pairs, we will probably keep the number at 6 price pairs. And then we just ask guilds to please change up what they're providing to get some variety into it. So not everybody should be required to push everything. I mean, we have 36 guilds, and I think 35 of them are pushing prices by now.
And it's designed to be ad hoc like that, right? I mean, you talk to some BPs and they get, I don't want to say angry, but they call it spam. And kind of is. 36 of us pasting the same data on there is the same validation as maybe 11.
Yeah, but still, because it's crucial to the pay and everything, rather have too many than too little in this case.
The minimum versus going above and beyond.
Okay, well then, I understand the point for keeping it, rewarding a point for it. Maybe it could be reduced. I'm just looking at it in terms of like things that, well, if everyone is providing it, it actually makes it more difficult to discern the efforts of people, you know, and recognizing the things that, well, actually differentiates the different guilds, you know what I mean? And going above and beyond. Because yeah, if you, and also like it kind of skews the standby pay, because obviously like let's say if the price oracle was, you can only get half a point then, right? So maybe the standby pay or the standby requirement would be reduced to like 119, and then all the guilds would just be like just 6 points less, and it would roughly be the same, but all of a sudden now there's a better range, there's a better distribution that's more accurately representative of the guilds that are receiving standby pay. Does that make sense?
Not sure.
You may repeat because I didn't get the benefit of lowering the points and at the same time lowering the minimum requirements for it, because it's essentially the same. It's just that you need. Yeah, no, it's essentially the same if we consider the price oracle somewhat mandatory to BPs.
Give me a sec. It's more like a math thing. It's more like a numbers thing, but it would impact how the standbys are being compensated. Like it would slightly.
Yeah,
it would
because of
tip the
scaling, it
scale.
would impact the pay.
Right.
It would reduce. Would reduce the minimum and then adjust the spread. But it would also draw down the top 21, so it would probably not make an impact if we expect it to impact top 21 producers the same way as it impacts standby producers. So
Well,
in the end, the range would remain the same because we're deducting these 6 points from everybody.
The range would remain the same, but those who are closer to the bottom would be affected more adversely than those who are closer to the top, which is
Not really.
I'd say so, because if you're moving it, because if it's like 125 minimum from like 216,
Yeah.
you move it down to 119 from 210, that ratio is changed proportionally. That's changed.
Yeah, okay, neglectable, but yes.
Well, it's about making the adjustments to get the desired behaviors while compensating the people who are putting in the efforts, more aptly, right? And this is that's like an example, right? So if we took off 6 points there, because it is something that it's very low-hanging fruit, and although it is a vital service, especially if it's you're going beyond just providing the Wax USD pair. Over time, there are going to be more and more responsibilities and expectations of guilds, and being able to, there's going to be bloats, right? So we got to kind of trim the fat over time, and I think this is like a reasonable area to approach.
Yeah, we can definitely trim it. It doesn't. I don't think it matters that much. We added it when we wanted to focus more on DeFi on Wax. That was the reason to introduce it. Unfortunately, we never really got this DeFi push we had hoped for because of lack of liquidity, lack of proper bridges. So it's just there, it's sitting there. If we reduce it or not, it does not really make a difference if we adjust the minimum score. So, but we could also at the same time say we reduce it and not reduce the minimum score because we have added a lot of points. I mean, I think we added Price Oracle without adjusting the minimum score and essentially made it easier, so we could go the same way and just take it away, or take part of it away without adjusting the minimum score again either.
Okay. I'll leave that to you guys' discretion, and of course the discretion of the community, and how the guilds would like to be evaluated on this kind of thing. But what about the chain API? Why is the points being given for this?
Different story, because this chain API is it's not for having chain API, it's for having public chain API. So we have guilds, most of the guilds have private peering, and we wanted to grant points for having it public and having it readily available, and quite a few guilds don't have it properly or haven't had it properly. That's why we introduced it, but it's not something that the chain falls apart if one guild or two guilds don't have it. We added it a couple months ago only because we saw some shortcomings there.
I have a comment on the chain API and the current chain API scoring, and I think we are not putting enough emphasis on it. It's, in my opinion, much. It's worth more points than only one.
Can you tell me a bit more about what it does?
Yeah, it's essentially the RPC endpoint Node.js provides you to interact with the chain, fetch table rows, sign in transactions, sign in with your wallet. That's what the chain API in our case is doing. It's composed of several plugins, and I'm also sure I've seen RPC nodes which didn't have the wallet plugin enabled, for example, and I didn't like that. That one
Really?
detail especially.
Okay.
But yeah. And also we don't look at, so we only look at the uptime, but we don't really look at the performance.
What do you
of
mean by the
such an
wallet
RPC
plugin?
node. Like in programmers, for example, since they're having their custom implementation or something like that, they don't run default Node EOS and the wallet plugin on Node OS. I don't know how to call it.
I think it's
on
the account
RPC node.
query lookup.
Is it the account? Yeah, because I don't know what the wallet plugin. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's essentially your ability to query accounts, authorizers, and stuff. I've seen it turned off in some instances for a short time. I don't know why, but I've seen it missing on some nodes. That one, then performance of.
So you mean
being
account
able-
queries? You don't mean wallet?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
we're using the wrong naming here. Probably account queries not
Yeah,
possible.
there's a flag for it in the JSON.
Exactly. I've seen that turned off. I've also seen huge variance in performing requests to the RPC node, differences in rate limits, making it not unusable. So the endpoint was up whenever it was requested by a validation tool. However, when I used it to fetch a few table rows quickly in succession with a recursive job, I've ran into many timeouts over the past 12 months, and that's what I didn't like, for example, even though I wasn't hitting it too hard. But the rate limits are different on different chain APIs, and I don't say we should agree on
Not only
one
rate limit, also the timeout limit.
Yeah,
Well,
there's
I
a
can
huge
tell you-
difference in the chain APIs.
there's a big problem. I mean, as a person who takes, I don't know, 30 million hits on my API a day, and that's rate limited because they'll ramp it up to 1 million a minute, doing get table rows, pushing smash transactions. There are bots and scripts, and literally they will bounce IPs. They will on every single request.
Yeah,
and
there are thousands of failing push transactions
hammer it
every minute.
as much, right? And so it's kind of this double-edged sword. In order for like an Anchor or like a Wax wallet login, don't get mad at me if it's not Wax wallet, but like the login process can tend to trigger like, I don't know, 10, 12, 15, 20 calls, bam, 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 all back to back to back. And so what ends up happening, and this is working with a lot of these projects that came to us for private nodes, now for free, is that ultimately even a normal non-abusive, quote unquote, process could pretty quickly trip up the same rate limits that, look, I don't want to have to tell people no. I would love to just keep throwing hardware at it and keep taking more, but they literally will smash you into the ground. You can't. If it's free and useful, it's amazing. And when it really happens, watch when those prices move. You see a 5% move in the market, mine and Anders' APIs are getting smashed because the bots start kicking in and just doing everything they can to try to balance it out. Make sense?
Yeah.
And since their transaction will fail on the API nodes, they just spam them until they work.
Right.
I mean, that's okay, but if I as the user
That
quickly-
punishes you as a user, though.
Correct. That's
Yeah.
why you can't have an open rate limit, because I don't want to punish you.
I went
But I have-
and,
no,
and
of
loosened
course.
our rate limit just a few weeks ago, and a few days later I had to strengthen it again.
Okay, I may have misunderstood what you just said, but of course you should have rate limits in place, but they should not be so strict that the user gets timed out if he does 5 requests in 2 seconds.
Shouldn't be, no. Timeout is not, might not be the same thing though.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're rate limited, you're being timed out afterwards, right? Because
From us,
It
you will
depends
just
on the
be turned
policy.
down.
Yeah.
You will not
like
get a timeout. You will
completely
get a,
forever.
No, we stopped
Yeah.
responding because it literally would crush my proxy server into oblivion because I keep having to say no, 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 no. I mean, nobody respectfully uses the you know, so
Yeah.
one bad apple ruins it for everybody. Is that it's not like a normal. Yeah, you do the same thing to an Ethereum RPC node, you're going to get blacklisted. I mean, because they just can't. I mean, it's different for us. We have a
but
lot
the
more.
timeout he's talking about might be unrelated to the rate limit of the API.
You'll get a timeout on ours because we stop responding. We literally black hole you and say, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm going to jam up your session, so you're going to get the point. Does that make sense? I mean, this is literally a cat and mouse game of what do I do to prevent you from smashing within $1 million a minute? There's no policies other than rate limits. You know, I mean, we've had to
Yeah.
remove some of them. Alcor reached out to me and related to the IBC, even the IBC processes would tend to get jammed up on not our wax rate limits, our EOS rate limits. So I relaxed some of those, but I'm telling you, man, do you not remember, and it's been a while, knock on wood, but they literally would just go down the list of BPs. We would go into the channel and say, it's my turn. I'm getting $1 million a minute and my APIs are DDoSed. And then you'd finally rate limit the hell out of them and catch the mouse. And they'd move over to Anders API, or then they move over to Bounty Blocks API. Because they literally just...
What I don't get about that is why do you have to manually blacklist them or rate limit them when you have like, I don't know, whatever web server you're using, a JProxy or Nginx, the one is a reverse proxy, when you can just have a rate limit on your proxy or web server.
They are. That's what you're hitting. But the thresholds are so low that legitimate people get jammed up to try to prevent the smashing from the bots.
Yeah. Okay.
Nothing of this is manual, I would assume, for anything.
Yeah. I mean, I do have manuals because I get tired of getting abused. The IP lists are IP based. Well, these guys, when they want to do it, they go and like for $5 subscribe to the Amazon service that says every single request change my IP. Holy shit. I have to go in and block a /8. I have to block the entire AWS data center. Guess what? All hell breaks loose because all the VPNs now can't connect to our APIs because they're all using AWS servers. So
yeah,
they literally will unload on you when they want to. And they don't care. They don't have to. They kill you and then move to the next one. And like I say, they have overloaded routers. They've overloaded proxy servers. And what we found the best policy is once you hit a rate limit to leave it open, because they immediately resmash it within a millisecond. But if I tarball it, it takes them a little while to figure it out. And I'm not having to deal with 1 million requests a second. It's more handleable. I don't know. Throwing shit against the wall until something's stuck.
So
anyway.
Back to my question: are we putting enough emphasis on the chain API? Which my answer was no.
I guess
Then
that's
I-
from a testing purpose, not from everyone should have one. There are also requirements on what they should contain.
Yeah,
I was
the
just
one
going to
is
say, I think the requirements should be updated. There seems to be a lot of metric. There seems to be a very loaded construct, and I agree that it shouldn't. Like, I mean, I feel like you just shouldn't. Everything that you outlined about how the chain API, like everything that people have to do to get 1 point for the chain API, that should just be part of the requirement.
Agreed.
It is. So it has been for a very long time. We have updated a lot of the requirements on the different APIs that we have. And here, for example, we also list like the mandatory endpoints for scoring the chain API, right? And also an SLR. Well, it could be extended.
So the point is here with Chain API, it's currently tiered. So you get penalized if you have too little, and you get bonus points if you're good enough. That's how it is currently. Because we can't sometimes not tell if your API endpoint is just overloaded, and that's why we consider why it's perceived as down, or if it's actually bad, or if you actually had errors or issues, and that's why it's currently tiered. So if you look at the penalties, I think it's both minimum requirement, penalty, and bonus points based on specific uptimes.
Then you have another thing that's interesting. If you query tables on a chain API, you will get different amount of rows. Because you will have a time limit on that request, and when the node says, hey, I'm done now, you will get how many rows it found.
Yeah, that sucks.
And depending on what else is doing too. If somebody else is smashing it with a bunch of get tables, your thread suffers.
We have spent a lot of time on different chains to understand that, and it's rather complex actually. And testing how to optimize it.
So
For that,
running
it's
it,
not reliable
and then
to request 1,000 rows most times.
I think the predefined limit is 999, if I'm not mistaken completely.
If you have no limit, it gives you 10. I think 10 rows.
Yeah, default is 10. Yeah, I think is, or at least Clio's was. I don't remember the API. But yes, you can get tricked into thinking 1,000 is 1,000, and it's not. And it literally can vary based off of what Anders our bot is smashing on my API is doing, right? I mean, we do the best we can to not throw multiple servers at it. HTTP is now hyper-threaded, much better, multi-threaded, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that experience, man.
Nevertheless, it's not breaking fully, even if you get only 10 results out of 100. Even if you specified the limit of 100, the response comes with more true, with the key more and the value true, and then you also get the scope found. So you can recursively query it.
If you query the same node.
You run into but that will make you also run into rate limits pretty quickly.
I kind of think most people used 100 because 1,000 was just unusable. But less than that, you would quickly hit rate limits.
on Ross's RPC nodes always. It serves quite well.
He's worked very, very hard to make sure that's the case. I don't think you might find that on everybody's because I don't expect everybody else to work that hard on providing APIs if that isn't what they want to do.
Don't tell him, but I'm currently working with this RPC node, and I've seen it having slow requests every there and then. Very rare, but it happens even on his RPC node.
Like you're requesting across the world.
Wait,
yeah,
literally
but
have
10 seconds.
You have probably half of the entire network's nodes within like 200-mile circle of you in Europe, and you're using a node in Australia. No, everything's in Hetzer, Finland, or Germany, or where's it at?
Yeah, basically Finland and Germany.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, of all of the places, Europe has got to be the best place to have node access. They're literally right down the road. And using mine and Ross's is probably Rio. I probably would not use Brazil. That would probably be a
Yeah, just for the lulz.
For the
I don't know where
lulz.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I have 3 nodes in there. I'm cycling them, but I don't know why. I started
So
using
you
them.
talk about all this high level, the proxies. I mean, understanding HA proxy and fighting this battle and chasing this down and doing these routes and having all these nodes. You want to know why sysops for a PP that requires infrastructure takes a damn Linux admin? It's because that's the game you're expected to play. And if you don't, if somebody finds it and crushes it, you just take your lumps, you know? Why do we want all of our value providers to have to do that?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm
Oh, no,
sure we're going to hear that one once again. Yeah, I've made my point to that comment. Trying
It was a
to
Kaz question, right? I mean, that was
constantly think about. Yeah, Kaz's question was actually questioning the score for the chain API or
Yeah, if
the
it would get
score.
any score, just be punished if it's not working.
Yeah, 1 by 1.
So
And
0
at
points
the trans-
or minus. That's basically what
Yeah.
he means. Why is it getting points when it should be expected?
That's good. Why is it getting points if it's being expected?
Yeah, that's basically
Um,
his question.
I think what we are assessing here is really the uptime and availability of such an API. Even though it's mandatory for BPs, if we didn't check it, we wouldn't have such a high quality in
That's why
Chain
you
API
should
and
punish
RPC
it if
nodes.
it's not up to risk score. You should not
Yeah, but
reward it if it is. That's his
Isn't that
question.
what's happening? But that's what's happening if we assign a score of 0 to it.
guys,
Yes.
we have this tiered. There's different uptimes and different uptimes on different impacts. You have to have it to pass minimum requirements. You have to have, I think, there's 70% or 75% uptime to not be penalized, and you get bonus points if you have an uptime of 95%.
Yeah, here.
And that's
here
how
the-
we apply it on many individual endpoints and things, that we have these tiers where you go from being penalized to getting a bonus score for being good.
I still feel like our assessment of Chain API should be like 0 to 2, or it should be, yeah. I don't know. I just think we're not putting enough emphasis on it. Luckily, going by the stats that we had this year, different validators. I'm pulling up here now the validation core. It has been a very well working component for most of the guilds during the year. Let's see how long it takes. Okay. Kaz, did that answer your question? Or to say it in Michael's terms, does it make sense?
It does make sense. It does answer my question, but I guess the follow-up question is, well, what are you guys going to do about it? Are you guys going to keep it as is? Are you guys going to make it 0 points if you're doing what is expected of you? Are you going to trim the fat a little bit on it? You know, because I appreciate that it is a valuable thing. I appreciate that there is a difference between, how it is, like there is a reason why it's given a point at all under this current system. But I also think that it's not, again, you know, as time goes on, we're going to have more and more infrastructure added to this list. And if we keep giving points for things that are, well, quite frankly, should be expected of guilds, it only makes it more difficult to differentiate between them.
What else can we add to that list?
I don't think we need to add anything more to the list. I think we need to slowly trim it back to things that are, well, if everyone's providing this, then it should be an expectation.
No, you mentioned that we will be adding more stuff to that list.
As
Quite
time goes
rare.
on. Not,
It's quite rare to add stuff to the technical infrastructure, unless there's something I'm missing.
no, I don't think there's anything that needs to be added to here. I'm just saying, like, as time goes on, well, this list will, expectations increase.
How so?
That's just the trend. That's just a pattern. Like, I don't know. That's not, as time goes on, expectations increase. Like, that's simply how it is. You can see that over like since the start of the OIG up until now.
I guess I'm not understanding what you mean.
Just means that things might be developed that might be added in the future.
Yeah, like for example, at the start, or Reagan mentioned like a couple of months ago, Chain API wasn't given a point. This is more of a recent addition because now expectations have increased, and so we're giving a point was being given because they wanted a bit more out of it. Same goes with like the price oracle. At the start, it was just the USD pair, and then while there were more pairs were added, and expectations were again increased, and points were being awarded for it.
And that is bad?
No.
I think it's not necessarily bad at the start, but it's like, well, if it gets to a point where everyone is participating in it and everyone's just receiving a point, then it should be a baseline expectation, and it should be given 0 points, and it should just be simply expected of all guilds to be delivering that service.
Yeah, but that's
Because-
what we do. We just give bonus points if you're good at providing it. And that's also what people want from us. They want from us to honor good infrastructure providers. So what we're hopefully doing down the line is make it harder to get these points by also evaluating the quality that is provided on these endpoints.
Sure, but I think stuff such as the Chain API and the price oracle do not deserve to be a full point compared to the magnitude of difficulty of the other areas. I think it simply should be a baseline expectation at this point in time.
The question is, what is baseline, and what do we put down to say this is not a full point? I mean, I also don't think Hyperion is 4 points if you provide a full history. So we could.
I think that is because of the expense associated with it.
Yeah, okay,
but-
filter full history. Yeah, okay. But then let's say partial Hyperion is neutral points. I also don't think that the current testnet is 1 point, because there is not much going on testnet. And providing testnet
You
is
still gotta
easy.
run it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a whole
exactly. You
stack to
still gotta
and
run it.
manage and
Yeah, exactly.
you want 95%. I got 2 of them to make sure it doesn't go down. I mean, I get it. I do think 4 points for full and 2 points for partial. We're the Hyperion shop, and I'm like, nah, bro, I'll take my 2 points and not run a 40 terabyte server. I mean,
I just want to highlight that if you currently don't provide Chain API, you receive a score of 0. So it is mandatory to have a Chain
exactly.
API.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's mandatory to have it, and then you are penalized if the availability is too bad, and then you get bonus points if it's better. So the question is just, is it too many or is it too little? And I do actually think providing proper if you provide proper Chain API, 1 point is even too little, because Chain API is the most crucial API we have on this chain. The problem is just that we don't have the metrics to properly measure if it's good or bad, aside of is it up or down.
when the more VPs you require to run it and measure it, the harder that's going to be.
I agree with everything that you said, but I also believe that it should, like the same metrics that you're using to give a point, that should be the baseline expectation, or else.
Okay, so you want to raise the bar.
Effectively, yes. I think that is what should slowly be happening over time. As long as it's not like coming with like an extensive amount of like cost, right? Such as the case of like a full scale, like Hyperion node. But I think this is a service, like, because it's like almost every single guild is getting that 1 point for the chain API.
Yeah, they should. Because everybody should provide a good service. Yeah, but I get what you mean.
But then it makes it more
Just
difficult to
Joseph,
discern
just
them.
speak, please. Joseph, just speak.
Exactly. I want to let Joseph speak to that too.
Yeah, I get what you mean, Cass. I see an extra value on giving points on what you mean as, you know, easy. How long? What's the word in English? In English, how low hanging fruit, right? I see the value on that because you know, a new company, new potential guild, new block producer comes to the chain, say, hey, okay, what do we have to do? Oh, I have to, you know, get these minimum requirements. Okay, yeah. I mean, we can do that this way, but if you're starting getting points, you know, me coming from the gaming industry is like, okay, it's like experience points. I'm getting in there. I'm starting with the low points. I'm doing it right? I'm getting my rewards, and then I need to get to that minimum requirement. We also have the weight. If you check the spreadsheets, there are points and the weight. I think the weight has lost most of the initial value because now weight is the same everywhere. But for me, I mean, I think it has more value having block producers trying to get 125 points than just trying to get 10 points. Maybe it's stupid, but for me, it has an extra moral value on that, right? And we are a chain that aims to get games and NFTs. So a little bit of game mechanics, I think it's not bad. But that's completely subjective, right?
I don't think gamification is inherently bad. I think it can be bad if it's obfuscating the purpose of this tool, because the purpose of
I
this
don't see
tool
how this is bad. In this
because
case.
it's obfuscating, because it's making it more difficult to discern the differences between the guilds.
But isn't this exactly what's happening here? It's supposed to discern the difference between the guilds, between making it and just not be penalized, or making it and get points for it. Or not get points for it. There's like 4 tiers. Yeah, go on, Plus.
That is correct. But because almost every single guild consistently gets 1 point for chain API, it actually doesn't serve its purpose in discerning it, because everyone's meeting those expectations. It's like having, let's say we gave an extra point for having a human in your guild. Well, everyone would get that extra point, and that wouldn't help discern the different guilds. It wouldn't help evaluate them any better. It's only
you fail, you
making
lose
it
the
more
point
difficult.
and also get penalized.
So what we discussed was increase the threshold, so that right now we have it at 75% uptime to be penalized and 95 to get the score, and we discussed increasing that to bring it to like 80 or 90 to be penalized and 98, 99 to get the score, something like this. Is this what would that change your opinion on it?
That'd be closer towards towards the right direction. Absolutely. And then, because if there is a distribution across all the guilds where, well, different guilds might be getting that point, they might be getting half of that point, they might be getting 1 point, well, then it is a valid metric for differentiating the different guilds. And so what you described by nudging the bar, not making it an absolute negative or zero, but making it, well, different SLRs, different uptimes, would give a bit of a different distribution, more strict distribution, then I think that could be a great intermediary approach. And then, well, if those changes were to take place, you could evaluate them after like a month or two and see, well, how does this change? How does this change for all the guilds? Because if a metric isn't differentiating the guild, then it's not something that requires like dynamic, like for example, like round availability, a lot of the guilds will consistently score 2 out of 2 points on that, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Because that's like I don't know how to put it into words, but it's like it's okay if that is like because that will not always be met, but I don't think that should disqualify you from that shouldn't be like a minus like 900. You know what I mean? I think it is difficult. It can be difficult at times to have the perfect round availability, and when things go amiss, well, efforts have to be expended to maintain that. So I think that's totally justified to give the 2 points for the round availability. But I think for the chain API, it's practically an expectation.
I think actually now we're having the more important conversation, or I mean, you don't always need to change the points and the criteria for it or whatever it is, but just by having a point range, you could put emphasis on the different item on here. Yeah, sure. That's something where you can bring up your arguments for this is enough points or this is not enough points. And I also think that's a good conversation to have.
Absolutely. I think it's been very helpful for me, just going over these different items and you guys sharing your thoughts on it. I don't know how it is for everyone else, but I definitely appreciate discussing these ideas.
It depends who you're talking to, because clearly if you talk to very technical folks, they will tell you there's a difference in round availability in zero rounds missed when it comes to determining if someone is a reliable or productive block producer. And someone else will argue the price oracle, I never used it yet, so why is it worth a point or not? And some others are using it, and that's how they value it, right? And same also for a history solution. Atomic Assets API, quality of life APIs. I think that point can be made on any of those items. It just depends on your perspective on it. What it comes down to is shaping public infrastructure in a way that developers can easily get data on Works, interact with data on Works.
Mm-hmm.
Just enabling developers, creators, and products at the same time. And that's my argument for the chain API. It's the point of direct interaction for the users and for developers. So for me personally, it's way more important than Hyperion history when it comes to the score for a guild. You have a very well-functioning chain API. That's all I need as a developer or as a user. Once a year, I need a good history solution. Just because it's expensive to host and has a knowledge involved, and also server costs and whatever it is, it's just complicated to do. But I don't use it regularly. So for me, is it worth 4 points compared to the other items? Probably not, right? But that's not the only thing about the guidelines right now. It's not only how much worth does it have for the community and for the developers and for the users of Works, but also does it cover the cost for maintaining that infrastructure or that part of the infrastructure? And that's where you would say, okay, a chain API is worth a point, is worth X dollars, because that's the actual cost of maintaining a good API. And on the other side, you have a history solution, which value is almost completely determined by how expensive it is to host and not how useful it is.
So on that note, what if for things such as the chain API, I know it's not possible for all of them, all the items, but what if for the chain API, there was an extended ceiling on it, so that, or I guess, because I understand the value in giving points. Like I understand like that the logic of like, well, this item could be, this criteria could be expected of all the guilds. Well, you could apply that to all of them, and then all of a sudden we'll give 0 points for infrastructure. You must provide all of these things perfectly, you know. So it's like, well, what if instead the other way to approach it would be, well, what if there was a higher ceiling with more difficult to meet criteria, more higher expectations, but also the opportunity to score extra points? Could something like that be possible for, like, let's say the chain API? Because if you have, let's say, just like high uptime is one thing, but what if you've been providing a chain API that's you know, you're getting a crazy amount of requests every single day. You got like, maybe you're in like the top.
I'm working on a few ideas in that regard, but planning to discuss internally after Christmas, because I want to take some time to put in order my notes. I'm also planning to send a small questionnaire with a few questions to the guilds to get some feedback. And yeah, I've been working on that for like a few weeks. But with the election and everything, I decided to postpone everything until the election was done, and now Christmas is coming. So I personally have a few ideas in that regard that we'll discuss with the rest of the team after Christmas.
I also think we don't necessarily need to agree, Joseph, on one single proposal, but instead, I also think we can present separate proposals with separate assessments of values and have them discussed.
I'd love to hear any ideas or proposals that you'd like to share today, if you think any of them are worth sharing for now. Joseph?
No, not yet. I want to put my notes in order first.
Yeah, no problem.
It's also been 2 hours.
Yeah, we typically exaggerate it. And I blame you guys totally, because at the end, everyone is like, oh, we're meeting too often and we're meeting too long. And then you guys still stick around with us 2 hours and we have good conversations. So
It's only too often and too long if you don't have good conversations.
yeah, which we typically manage to have, even though we don't have an agenda. I think we're raising important things. We're getting somewhere with iterating over those questions and those problems. Anyways, yeah, let's probably conclude for today, right? 2 hours in, I think.
I think that was, absolutely. I think that was a whole lot of ideas. So give everyone the time to digest some of them at least.
Yeah. And Thursday we're meeting again. Community roundtable. Last one of the year probably. Make sure to join and hang out and talk about. We're probably going to look into Wax Fun. And Henrik is so proud of his king token that he's probably going to talk about it too. Thursdays are also fun, so if you have time, join them.
I can't. They're always on top of one of my other meetings that I can't move. So
yeah, I get that.
We could introduce a new Saturdays meeting. I think everyone is free there.
Saturdays, yeah. No.
Sunday
And
morning.
also Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not a daily meeting?
Yeah.
A daily meeting, yeah.
Yeah, daily stand-up.
And then we also need a weekly Twitter space and a Telegram developer hangout twice a day.
And then we need second breakfast. And what about third breakfast? Eh?
We also have the yearly meetup, right?
A yearly meetup.
Daily meetup.
Yeah. Who's able to host that? No, seriously now. Who's going to host the next Wax community meetup?
The OIG.
Somewhere.
Come to Canada. Come to Victoria Island. We'll house it. We got a whole lot of islands here. We'll be chilling. We'll make a Wax Island for the week.
I'm not kidding. There's a nice venue in Portugal next year, I think. A huge Web3 venue. It's a beautiful country. Maybe we can meet there.
I tell
Can I
you
apply
what,
for a
I'll-
Wax Labs grant?
as soon as I decided where to do my next vacation, if I ever do a vacation, then I'll just host a meetup in that country so I can deduct it by my tax.
Good idea.
Come to Spain. Let's do it in Barcelona.
No, come to Madrid. If we aren't coming more than we usually come for these weekly meetings, then I can almost host it.
At your
I think the
place?
last one we were like 70 people. The one in Amsterdam or more?
Oh, that
A lot of people, yeah.
Then I would need some funds. to-
London also were a
basically.
ton of people.
I missed that.
London was cool.
Anyways, in case you have a good idea for a good meetup spot, ideally with some venue happening at that location where we represent Wax, that would be ideal.
I've heard Bali is great.
Who?
I've heard Bali is great. And it's far away from everybody, aside of Ross.
Yeah, I doubt we're going to work there.
I have a good meetup space on Bali, so it's not out of the question.
It is for me.
Under a coconut tree. Okay, folks. Enough for today. Thank you very much for all the input, the feedback, the sharing of thoughts. That was a good one today again. I'm looking forward to meeting you guys then in January for the next tech chat. The 7th of January will be our next tech chat. If I don't see or speak you until then, have a great time around the end of the year, Christmas or whatever else you are enjoying. And really looking forward to the next one. Have a great Tuesday, have a great week, and talk to you soon.